Episode 1 Betrayal on the wedding night. Red candles flickered in gilded holders, casting the bridal chamber bright as daylight. Alicia Winster held a glass of red wine, a sweet smile on her lips, waiting for her husband, Earl Sheldon Black. The sound of the door opening reached her. She instinctively smoothed her wedding dress, but when she turned, she saw Sheldon with a blonde woman in his arms, standing at the doorway. The woman wore a revealing red gown, clinging to him, their lips still pressed together. The glass in Alicia's hand crashed to the floor, red wine splattering on her white gown like blood. Sheldon casually released the woman, wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, and wore a disgusting smirk on his handsome face. "My dear, I didn't think you'd actually show up," Sheldon said, his tone dripping with contempt. "I thought you'd have the decency to stay away, like your penniless tailor mother." "Sheldon, what are you doing?" Alicia's voice trembled, but she fought to preserve what little dignity she had left. "We're legally married. This is our wedding night." "Legally married?" Sheldon laughed as if he'd heard the funniest joke. He let go of the woman, stumbled over to Alicia, and drunkenly pinched her chin. "In the daughter of a bankrupt tailor, worthy of being my countess." The woman beside him giggled, cutting in. "Sheldon, look at her. She's about to cry. So pitiful." "Don't say that, Anna." Sheldon turned and kissed the woman's forehead. "She's still my wife in name. I have to save her some face." Alicia clenched her jaw, her nails digging deep into her palms. She remembered 3 months ago when Sheldon had proposed to her in her rundown tailor shop. He said she was the most beautiful girl he'd ever seen, that her talent and kindness had moved him, that he would give her the best life in the world. Back then, she naively thought she'd found true love. She never realized it was all a setup between Sheldon and his father, Earl Black. The old Earl had set his sights on their family heirloom, the Royal Etiquette Codex a treasure from her great-grandmother, containing the oldest and most essential courtly rules. "Hand over the codex, and I'll let you stay in this manor as a servant." Sheldon released her chin and pulled out a handkerchief to wipe his fingers as if he'd touched something filthy. "Or you can crawl back to your slum and be a poor tailor again." Alicia closed her eyes. Her mother's dying words flashed through her mind. "Daughter, that codex is our family's greatest treasure. But remember, no treasure is worth more than your dignity." She opened her eyes, her gaze turning icy. Under Sheldon and Anna's mocking stares, she slowly removed the tiara from her head, unclasped her wedding belt, and finally pulled a yellowed ancient book from an inner pocket. "Is this what you want?" She held up the codex, her voice unnervingly calm. Sheldon's eyes lit up instantly. He lunged for it, but Alicia was faster. She spun around and threw the codex straight into the blazing fireplace. "No!" Sheldon let out a shriek and dove toward the hearth, but the flames devoured the ancient book in seconds, leaving only ashes drifting in the air. He spun back, eyes bloodshot, staring at Alicia. "You insane woman! Do you have any idea what you've done?" "Of course I do." Alicia removed every piece of jewelry from her body and tossed them to the ground, one by one. "I'm protecting my last shred of dignity." Anna shrieked from the side. "My God, she's truly lost it. That codex was worth 100,000 gold coins." Alicia looked at Sheldon's contorted face and suddenly laughed. She laughed until tears streamed down her face. "Sheldon, you know what? My great-grandmother told me true nobility was never written in a book. It's in a person's heart. You can take everything from me, but you can never take away the honor carved into my bones." With that, she straightened her back and turned toward the door. Behind her came Sheldon's hysterical roar, "Go! Go and never come back. Let's see what becomes of you. A discarded woman without a dowry, who do you think would want you?" Alicia didn't look back. She stepped into the night, the autumn wind catching her wedding gown, making her look like a stubborn white rose. But when she reached the long, tree-lined avenue leading out of the manor, she finally crouched by the roadside and sobbed silently. Asterisk, a discarded woman without a dowry. Asterisk, those words stabbed into her heart like knives. Her mother had worked herself to death preparing her dowry. She thought marrying Sheldon would honor her mother's memory, but it had all been a lie. Rain began to fall, cold droplets hitting her thin gown. She looked up at the pitch-black sky, despair crashing over her like a tide. Just then, a black carriage drew up from the distance and stopped beside her. The driver, an old man in neat livery, lifted the curtain, revealing a dim, warm interior. "Madam, do you need help?" Alicia looked up and saw an elderly woman seated inside, her face dignified. She wore a well-tailored black gown, her silver hair swept up in a flawless bun. She was clearly noble. "Get in, child," the old woman said gently. "This rainy night is no place for a young lady." Alicia hesitated for a moment, then climbed in. She was soaking wet, feeling out of place in the luxurious compartment. The old woman handed her a woolen shawl. "Wrap yourself in this. Don't catch cold." "Thank you, madam." Alicia accepted the shawl, her voice still choked with tears. "I saw everything just now," the old woman said calmly. "You did well." Alicia froze. She expected sympathy or questions about why she'd been thrown out. Instead, she received praise. "I've heard of that codex," the old woman continued. "It was said to have been written by the founding queen 300 years ago, containing not just intricate courtly rituals but many interesting stories from the palace. Burning it was a shame. But, child," she paused, her gaze sharpening, "in this world, there are few who would cast aside material things for the sake of dignity." Alicia bit her lip, unsure how to respond. The old woman looked at her and suddenly smiled. "I hear the palace is recruiting a new lady-in-waiting to teach etiquette to the young noble ladies. If you're willing, I can give you a letter of recommendation." "What?" Alicia looked up in disbelief. "But I'm already married. That marriage is as good as void." The old woman waved a hand. "I heard that foolish earl say he could divorce you. A divorced woman is free in the eyes of the law." She smiled softly. "And anyone who can burn 100,000 gold coin codex on her wedding night has a spirit I admire." Episode 2, A Chance Encounter at Court. 3 months later, in the palace's administrative hall. Alicia wore a plain gray dress, clutching the letter of recommendation tightly in her hand, standing before the grand palace gates. Her heart pounded, her palms sweaty. The chance encounter on that rainy night 3 months ago, the old woman turned out to be the Empress Dowager's cousin, Duchess Catherine Astor. Over those 3 months, with Lady Astor's help, Alicia had rented a small room in the slums, surviving by mending clothes for others. When she received the letter of recommendation Lady Astor had sent, she couldn't believe her eyes. "Miss Winster," I've seen your letter, said Administrative Officer Bernal Devon, a man in his 50s with a monocle, carefully examining the document. Lady Astor recommends you as a lady-in-waiting to teach etiquette to Her Highness, Princess Ella. Yes, Your Honor. Alicia tried to keep her voice steady. But your resume says you're a tailor's daughter. Bernal frowned. With all due respect, that seems at odds with the palace's requirements. I studied courtly etiquette under my mother for 12 years, Alicia replied calmly. I also speak 3 languages and have knowledge of history, music, and painting. Before Bernal could respond, hurried footsteps sounded outside. A young woman in extravagant court attire burst in, followed by a group of flustered maids. Lord Devon! Lord Devon! The woman gasps. Her Highness has caused trouble again. She threw the Minister of Internal Affairs' wig into the fountain. Bernal nearly jumped out of his chair, sweating profusely. Oh dear, what has Princess Liliana done now? She thought the minister's wig looked like a hedgehog and wanted to test if it could swim. The maid's voice trailed off. Bernal rubbed his forehead and turned to Alicia. Miss Winster, consider this your test. You have 3 minutes to persuade Her Highness to stop her mischief. Alicia was taken aback. This was part of the scheduled evaluation, but she stepped out quickly. When she reached the fountain in the garden, she saw a girl of about 7 perched on its edge, holding up a dripping wig, surrounded by a crowd of ministers and maids. Your Highness! An elderly minister stamped his foot. That's my wig. Mine. But it's so much fun, Lord Minister. The little princess blinked her big eyes, completely unaware of the mess she'd made. The ministers whispered among themselves. Some muttered about the spoiled child. After all, this princess was the only child of the king, doted on endlessly since her mother, Queen Mary, had passed. Alicia stepped forward. She didn't rush to scold like the others. Instead, she crouched by the fountain, meeting the princess's eyes. Everyone thought this newcomer was mad. Such a stern gaze would only make the princess more defiant. Your Highness, Alicia said, her voice soft, do you know that 300 years ago, the founding queen played by this same fountain? But she did something else. The princess's curiosity was piqued. She tilted her head. What did she do? She put the wig on her head, looked in a mirror, and said, When I grow up, I want to be as wise as the minister. Alicia spoke slowly. And when she grew up, she became the smartest queen the kingdom had ever known. The princess blinked, as if thinking. Just then, a minister interrupted, Nonsense. The founding queen never did that. Alicia ignored him and kept her eyes on the princess. If your highness returns the wig to the minister now and apologizes, what do you think will happen? What? The minister will surely say, Her Highness is so wise she will surely become the most enlightened king in the kingdom. The ministers stifled laughs. This was the first time anyone had used a story to teach the princess. The red-faced minister was about to argue further when the princess giggled. She hopped off the fountain, walked to the old minister, and curtsied. I'm sorry, Lord Minister, she said, mimicking adult tones. I didn't know your wig was so important. The old minister was stunned. He knelt immediately. Your Highness, you honor me. My wig is lucky to bring you joy. Alicia smiled softly. This little princess was sharp, learning quickly. Just then, a deep voice sounded from behind. An interesting method. Elijah turned and saw a man in a deep blue kingly robe standing nearby. His face was handsome, his expression cold, but his deep eyes held a trace of amusement. The ministers around dropped to their knees. Your Majesty. Alice's heart lurched. She hurriedly bowed. Long live the king. Before her stood King Arthur Windsor Roman III, 30 years old and widowed for 3 years. Though she'd heard much about him, seeing him in person was overwhelming. You're the new lady in waiting? The king studied her. What's your name? Elijah Windsor, your majesty. She kept her head down. Windsor, that name sounds familiar. The king stroked his chin. I think I've heard your story. Cold sweat broke out on Alicia's back. Sheldon must have badmouthed her plenty. She was about to respond when the king added, Lady Astor mentioned you. She said you have courage. She looked up to find the king approaching, looking down at her. Since you managed to get Ella down from the fountain, you must have some skill. But his voice turned icy. I detest pretentious people, especially women who come to the palace riding on my cousin's coattails. I understand, your majesty. Elijah answered calmly. I will prove my worth through my work. The king snorted, turned, and walked away. Before leaving, he left a parting remark. If you're truly capable, I expect to see an obedient Ella at the court banquet 3 days from now. Once the king was gone, Alicia let out a breath. She turned and found the little princess standing beside her, gazing up with curious eyes. What's your name? The princess asked. Alicia, your highness. Is that story about the founding queen true? The princess pressed. No, Alicia admitted honestly. But a good story can teach better than the truth sometimes, don't you think? The princess paused, then burst into laughter. I like you, Alicia. You're nothing like those old women who just lecture all day. Episode 3 Court Turmoil 3 days were far too short for preparation. Before Alicia could fully learn the palace's layout, she faced her first major test. Morning sunlight had barely seeped through the windows when Alicia stood outside the princess's chambers, notebook in hand. Maids rushed in and out, bustling about. Your Highness, you must wear the blue gown today, Alicia said, standing at the bathroom door against the sounds of clattering from inside. No, I want pink. Pink matches my hair best. The princess's voice rang out. Pink suits you, but tonight's banquet is for the southern envoys. Blue represents nobility and elegance. It better showcases the kingdom's grace. The door swung open. The princess stood there, pouting. Are you making up stories again? This time, it's true. Alicia stifled a laugh. Blue is the oldest royal symbol, a tradition since the founding queen. If you wear blue, the envoys will see you as a proper princess. When they return south, they'll say our little princess is the picture of grace. The princess's eyes lit up. She loved praise. Without another word, she turned to change. Next came the hair, another challenge. The princess's fine hair was easily tangled. Several maids struggled to pin it up. Alicia took a deep breath and stepped behind the princess. Your Highness, if you'll trust me, can you do hair? The princess asked excitedly. My mother was a tailor. She knew all kinds of hairstyles. Alicia said, her fingers moving deftly through the princess's hair. As a child, she'd often helped her mother dress and style the children of wealthy families, gaining plenty of experience. In less than 30 minutes, she had pinned up a neat, lively bun, decorated with a few daisy clips adorable. The maids stared in awe. The princess looked in the mirror and clapped with delight. Once everything was ready, Alicia took the princess's hand and led her to the banquet hall. On the way, they passed several noble ladies who all blinked in surprise at the princess's appearance. She looks transformed. Who trained her? Heard it's a new lady in waiting. Quite beautiful, too. Though the whispers didn't reach the princess, Alicia caught them. She knew these noble women weren't just appraising the princess's grooming, they were sizing her up, this commoner who'd suddenly entered their world. When the banquet began, the king sat at the head table, with the southern envoys to his right. The princess sat beside him, with Alicia standing not far behind. "Is this the little princess?" an envoy asked respectfully. "We've heard of your highness's intelligence. Today, it's clear the rumors are true. Thank you for your kind words." The princess spoke in the tone Alicia had taught her, elegant yet innocent. "My father often speaks of the riches of your land." The king froze for a moment, then glanced back at Alicia standing behind. Surprise flickered in his eyes before fading. The banquet went smoothly. The princess not only avoided trouble but handled the envoy's questions with poise, even toasting her father at the right moment. All this drew whispers among the nobles. One person watched especially closely. That man was Sheldon Black, seated in a corner. He was one of the evening's guests. When he spotted Alicia in the palace, he thought he was dreaming. Impossible. How could that poor tailor's daughter be standing in the palace, dressed in such refined court attire? What shocked him more was how much she'd changed in 3 months. She was no longer the timid bride who'd cowered before him. Instead, she'd shed her girlish innocence, becoming a woman of grace and composure. Standing by the princess, her hair in a simple bun, exposing the elegant curve of her neck, expression calm, eyes slightly downcast, she had a certain charm he didn't recognize. Sheldon's eyes darkened. He'd married her only for the codex, never expecting her to burn it and leave. Now she'd waltzed into the palace. If anyone found out she was his discarded wife, it would damage his family's reputation. Worse, his current fiancée, Lady Isabella of the Marquis's family, was fiercely jealous. His mind raced. He had to bring her down, drive her out of the palace. Better if she left out of shame. Just as the banquet wound down, Alicia was about to take the princess back when a sweet yet sharp voice rang out behind her. "So this is the new lady in waiting, making a name for herself at court?" Alicia turned. A woman in a wine-red velvet gown approached. Her features were delicate, her bearing unmistakably noble. The crest on her chest marked her as the daughter of a marquess. Alicia knew instantly this was Sheldon's new flame, Beatrice Wentworth. "Lady Wentworth." Alicia curtsied. "I heard you were married before." Beatrice's lips curled into a sneer. "A discarded wife? It seems the palace's standards really have fallen. Anyone can stand here now." Alicia's heart clenched, but her expression didn't waver. She'd expected this from the moment she arrived. "I did have a marriage once," she said calmly. "But that was the result of a young girl being deceived by sweet words. I've since woken up, and now my only wish is to serve the royals faithfully, with no other ambitions." Beatrice hadn't expected such frankness. For a moment she was stumped. She quickly recovered. You do have some cunning. But don't forget your place. Don't make any mistakes here in the palace, or I'll be the first to report you to His Majesty. With that, Beatrice left head high. Alicia stood still, her hands trembling slightly, but a regal smile remained on her face. She knew this was just the beginning. Sheldon and Beatrice wouldn't let her off easily. Sure enough, the next morning a bombshell spread through the palace. The new lady in waiting is a discarded wife. She was thrown out by her husband and came crawling to court for a meal ticket. And the man was none other than Earl Black. Good heavens, the Black family married a tailor's daughter. How can such a low-born woman teach the princess? His Majesty should send her packing at once. The news spread like wildfire through the hallways. Those who had shown her a hint of favor now avoided her. The lower maids looked at her with strange eyes. Meanwhile, in the king's study, Arthur was reviewing documents when his personal attendant, Bion, entered. Your Majesty, there's something I think you should know. Speak. It's about the new lady in waiting, Miss Winster. Bion hesitated. There are rumors she was once married, and that she was cast out by Earl Sheldon Black. Arthur's hand paused on his pen. He looked up, his deep eyes unreadable. What do you think? I believe background matters, but character matters more, Bion said honestly. Last night, the princess's performance was plain for all to see. That's thanks to Miss Winster's guidance. You're right. Arthur set down the pen. But I need to see her true nature myself. Meanwhile, in the princess's chambers, Alicia was teaching her calligraphy. The little princess suddenly put down her brush and tugged at Alicia's sleeve. Alicia, is what they're saying true? Alicia stiffened, then knelt. What did you hear, Your Highness? They say you were abandoned by a bad man. The princess looked up at her, eyes innocent. But I think if he were truly good, how could he abandon you? So he must be the bad one, right? Alicia's eyes welled up. She turned away, suppressing the ache in her chest. You're right, Your Highness. He was the bad one. Then it's settled. The princess suddenly smiled. My father says a person isn't judged by what others say, but by what they do. You're kind to me, you teach me manners, you tell me stories. You're a good woman. Alicia couldn't help but smile, pulling the princess into a hug. Thank you, Your Highness. Just then, a servant entered. Miss Winster, His Majesty requests your presence. Alicia's heart sank. Finally, she smoothed her clothes and followed the servant to the king's study. Arthur stood with his back to her by the window, the setting sun casting a golden glow on his silhouette. Your servant greets your Majesty. She curtsied. Miss Winster, the king turned, his gaze piercing. I've heard some things about you. You were married to Earl Sheldon Black. Yes, Your Majesty. Alicia knew denial was pointless. She spoke plainly. Why did you leave? Because on our wedding night, he told me he married me only for my family's codex. Alicia's voice was calm, but every word carried pain. I'd burned it and left. Burned it? Arthur raised an eyebrow. Yes, I valued my dignity more than an ancient book. There was a long silence. Arthur approached her, stopping an arm's length away. You're honest. But in this court, honesty can be your most dangerous weapon. The Wentworth family has deep roots in the government. Lady Beatrice has set her sights on you. The road ahead won't be easy. I understand, Your Majesty. Alicia met his gaze without flinching. But I have no retreat. I must survive here. Arthur paused. He saw a light in her eyes that unsettled him, an unyielding flame. All right, he nodded. Then I'll give you a chance. In a week, the palace will host the Southern Envoy's farewell banquet. You will oversee the entire event's protocol. If you succeed, I'll show everyone your ability, and no one will dare slight you again. But if you fail, I will leave the palace voluntarily and drag no one down. Alicia knelt, accepting the weight of the task. Arthur looked at her kneeling figure. A faint, unreadable smile tugged at the corner of his lips. This woman was interesting, beset by hardship, yet still standing tall, just like that day by the fountain. He found himself curious about the surprise she might deliver a week from now.